Well, you managed to survive the introduction, so I'm hopeful we'll get through my presentation as well. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you. Tony Blair, the British Prime Minister, thought he could speak French very well. And he told the then President of France, Jacques Chirac, that he would like to conduct the press interview in French. During the course of the interview, the question was asked in French, "Are there any positions of the French president you desire to emulate?" He thought he was saying, "There are many positions of the French president I desire to emulate." What he actually said was, "I desire the French president in many different positions." Oh, I'm sorry, I just need my glasses. Sundars, could you get them out of my top pocket? Otherwise I'm going to be stuck. When I was asked to talk today, that I was talking in the middle of the afternoon, and there were going to be a lot of speakers before me that would be bringing you up to speed with all sorts of developments in the industry. So when it came to deciding my topic, I actually thought I would go a slightly different direction. And on Sunday, it'll be 25 years since I've been in the business, 23 and a half of them spent at the Jupiter Drawing Room. And I thought it might be interesting for you if I was to share with you some of the things that I've learned along the way with the Jupiter Drawing, the good things, the bad things, the things I think we did right and the things I think we've done wrong. And I'm hopeful if I do that, and there's anybody in the audience who's thinking of starting their own agency, it may have some value to them. Because if just one of you hears the talk today and thinks, you know, that's something I really would like to do, then my talk has been worth it. I've called it a whiskey session because the idea, it's like we're sitting down and having a whiskey together. And I realize I'm probably selling this short because I'm not offering you all a whiskey right now. You're just going to have to forgive me for that. You know, I wouldn't have started in this business if someone wasn't prepared to share. And this man, who looks like he's in his mid-40s on the cover, wrote this book when he was in his 70s. It's David Ogilvy, the legendary ad man. And he was prepared to share the secrets of what made a great advertising agency. I read that book from cover to cover in one sitting, and the second I closed it, I knew two things. I wanted to be a copywriter, and I wanted to have my own ad agency. And the day you decide to start an ad agency, and my friends from Joe Public are here, they're also from an entrepreneurial independent agency, and they will understand this very well. You sacrifice a lot. You give up the big offices and the expensive high-rises, and you move into humble surroundings, and you don't get much more humble than this. But one of the challenges you'll face if you start your own agency is how do you stand out from everybody else? And you have to constantly ask yourself that question. You don't have a lot of money, but how do you stand out? And one of the things when we started Jupiter that occurred to me is that we're supposed to be in a creative industry, and yet everybody names themselves after the partners in the agency. And when the partners in the agency die, everybody names them after the initials. So what happens is you have a string of letters for creative companies that are supposed to be distinctive. No. So when it came to choosing the name of this agency, I was reminded of a Guy de Maupassant short story in which there was a house in Normandy in Paris. It was actually a house of ill repute. And all of the local tradesmen were taken downstairs and entertained, but all of the dignitaries were whisked upstairs to the Jupiter Drawing Room. And that is where the name of the agency came from. And service was assured, as I'm sure you can imagine. One of the things that happened early on is that we spent our entire budget for boardroom furniture on just one item of the furniture, which is this leather Chesterfield. And to make it work for itself, I'm going to get to that in a second. We also started, because we're in Africa, go figure, with a Latin expression. Rem tene verba sequenter. Grasp the subject and the words will follow. And that was our guiding mantra for many years. I don't know if you've heard this story, but there was a grandfather who used to walk with his children, with his grandchild, to the fairground. And as he walked towards the carousel, he would see that it had beautiful lights and this beautiful music. But when he got up close, he saw how disappointed his grandchild was because, in fact, the thing was scruffy, and it was only the rides on the outside that went up and down. The ones inside didn't, and he felt that they were cheating the children. So he vowed that he would start his own children's park where he would build it so that kids were never disappointed. Now, he could have written that mantra down in 10 pages, what he was trying to do, his mission statement. But he chose just one line. And this is what it is. No cracked paint and all the horses jump. And his name was Walt Disney. And I have never to this day heard a better summation of what a company stands for than that one line that applied to his. So you need to try and work on it if you open an agency. And I hope you do better than we did, because I still don't have one. One of the things we used to do right at the beginning of the agency's life is we used to ask clients to undergo this exercise. And I don't know if you've got any paper or pens, but if not, do it mentally. We'd say to a client, they'd be sitting in our boardroom, draw a man on the beach, and we'd give them pens and papers. And we'd wait a few minutes, and then we'd say, right, show us what you've drawn. And sometimes they would draw a man on the beach like this, and sometimes they draw him like this, and sometimes they draw him like this. But what we'd say to them is, if you get the brief, draw a man on the beach, do something like this. Because it's unexpected. But if it only had to be unexpected, you could do your print ads and run them upside down. So it also has to be relevant. And we believed that everything needed to be executed with a sense of style, because that would be one of the hallmarks of our agency. And it's odd that for 10 years, we used to do that exercise with the clients that came into the boardroom every day. Well, every day. We had about 3 visitors a year, actually. But just to tell you a little anecdote, we had this new strat guy who'd been with us a couple of months, and he asked if he could present the credentials. So I said, sure. So I'm sitting in the meeting with a client, and this slide comes up. So he says, right, well, creativity isn't everything, obviously, because we have media and we have strategy and we have everything else. And then he clicks the next slide, and it says this. So it was somewhat embarrassing for him. But this is the other thing that we used to put all of our store by. If you start an agency, what are you going to stand for? And for us, it was simple. We were going to stand for creativity. The first ad that we ever did, and when you've got an agency and you're starting out, you've got to take opportunities as they come. And some of this work looks a bit dated now, but it's the principles that I'm really trying to tell you. So we got briefed to do an ad for a restaurant. And all restaurant ads are the same. There's a sort of bad shot of people sitting having food, or if they can't afford models, it's just a bad shot of tables and chairs, and a logo. And we actually went and did research, rem tene verba sequenter, and found that this restaurant we were supposed to be advertising had actually got a companion restaurant in Italy. And the gentleman there heard they were opening this restaurant in South Africa, and he came out and paid a visit. And there was the start of our ad. How far will you go to try out a new restaurant? And it won our first ever Loerie. And you know, when you're starting out, you have to take the opportunities where you find them. We had a client who came to us with very little money and said, I want to advertise Doc Martens boots. And he was trying to get women to wear them. And this campaign we did was so successful, he had to start building a new plant and running it through the night. And then he woke up one day and no one wanted Doc Martens boots anymore. But it was good while it lasted. And it was particularly good for us because this became the first South African ad ever to get into a thing called the D&AD Annual. So this helped our reputation enormously.